Hello and welcome to another session of Groundbreakers Live. I'm your host Javed Mohammed, and we're very honored to have with us Lucas Jellema, who is a Groundbreaker Ambassador and Oracle ACE Director. Lucas, welcome.
Thank you very much, Javed.
So Lucas, you are presenting at the Rocky Mountain ROMOUG. You have a session called Code with Honor on the importance and beauty of software programming. What a title, what a subject. How did you come up with that?
Out of shame, I think.
That wasn't the answer. That wasn't the answer I was expecting.
No, but I think it's as close to the truth as I can go.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure how it happened.
Uh-huh.
I had a back injury. I was watching some clips on YouTube. I stumbled across a presentation about clean code, and Robert Martin, Uncle Bob, presented his take on the software industry in general and software professionals in particular, and he touched me because of all the things he said that rang true and that were very confrontational. He basically said, we as an industry are not as professional as we should be. We are not as professional as society has a right to expect us to be. Mm-hmm. Can you honestly be proud of the work you deliver each day? Mm-hmm. Are you able to prove, not just to yourself, but to your customer, to the business, that the code you write does what it is supposed to do? And I'm afraid that to most of his questions, I can't give the answer that I should be able to give. And that doesn't just apply to me, that applies to many of my colleagues and peers and many of the IT professionals I work with at customer sites.
Okay.
And it was sort of an awakening.
All right. So when I think of beauty, and again, obviously, I'm just thinking of the way we use the word beauty in a non-software environment. You know, they say it lies in the eye of the beholder. It's very subjective. So is this something? The fact that we're talking about engineering and software, I'm assuming that there's something a little more objective about it. So can you help frame it for us?
Yeah, sure. Software needs to provide certain functionality, of course, but it also needs to be written in such a way that it can be maintained, that it can be evolved. Uh-huh. And as one of the authors of books on clean code express it, code, you should be able to read code as beautiful written prose. There shouldn't be any what the F's in your code. Every next line should be expected, or at least should be logical. Yeah. And we tend to forget when we have code that's working, we tend to forget to make the step to make code that's beautiful or clean at least. Mm. And sometimes, but it doesn't happen very often, I come across code, usually not written by me, that is beautiful, that is elegant, that's clear, that's easy to understand and easy to change if I have to. And I think that's what we all should aspire to. And we feel as software developers that we don't have the time to bring our code up to that level, to take it from the level of working code to the level of what I call professional code. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that you do have the time because it will pay back the extra effort that you initially have to make. It will pay back for itself later on when you start maintaining the code, or even when you start evolving the code after your first few test runs. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How much of beautiful code is really about the comments that go with them? Is is I'm just going to say, is it like a kind of a if you were to kind of take a cross section? I know there may not be something that um, statistics behind it, but what the question is just this: that how much of code is actually documented, and out of that, how much of it is good, useful, beautiful? And again, there may not be hard numbers, but I'm just trying to get a feel around this.
I'm afraid that the vast majority of code uh, does not live up to what I call beautiful or clean or professional.
Mhm.
So maybe 10 to 15% does, but I'm not even sure we get up to that level. We always start with great intentions. Each new project, each new fresh application, we start out with our best intentions, and then very early on we start to slip, unless we have great discipline, and we should have more discipline.
And do you think, sorry, and just a kind of a follow-on thought from that one, do you think that's because a lot of the time developers are under so much time pressure that it's how much code you produce, or you just want to get that functionality, the basic functionality out there, and then you find out, okay, it works, and then people don't go back and, you know, clean it up and document it and do all of those things?
Yeah, I think once we have our code working, we are so glad that we can show it to others, that we can deliver it to the business. We indeed do not take the time to clean it up,
Mhm.
to bring it to the level where it should be before we hand it to others.
Okay. So, and again, this is a very broad subject, I think, but if we were to go with the Lucas Helema gold standard of beautiful code, what would that look like?
Well, I can't claim it as my own standard. It's just
Uh-huh.
ideas that I've taken from others. But
Okay, well,
um,
give me your best shot.
code should be created in small units, units that do one thing,
Okay.
units that you can easily comprehend.
Uh-huh.
Extremely important in your code is your naming, the naming of functions or methods, and the naming of variables is crucial.
Okay.
Um, and from the naming, you should be able to understand what your code is doing. And I used to be a big believer in code comments, but
Mhm.
now I've learned that if you write it well and you use proper naming, you don't need documentation within your code. And
Uh-huh.
actually, the documentation and the comments in your code could easily be lying because they may not have been updated along with the code. The only thing in the end you can rely on is the code itself. That's the
Mhm.
bit that's compiled and that will be running. The comments don't really give you any certainty. So whereas in the past I tended to use a lot of comments and documentation, I now know I should not. It's the poor man's option to writing proper code
Okay.
is using comments.
All right. Okay. That's very clear. So in terms of naming, I mean, I think you hit upon something which is very important, that, you know, whether it be the functions or the variables and so forth,
And also the
are
tables in your
self.
database and the columns and the tables
So,
in your database.
I mean, I don't know how my guess is that probably this is probably not taught that much in computer science schools and everything. It requires a certain proficiency in language, um, as well as, I don't know, common sense, I guess, too. Um, how do you think we can inculcate a better world where, yeah, we know not only we have more beautiful people, but we have more beautiful code and more beautiful behavior?
Well, of course, you would have to attend my session at the training days to know every last detail. Um, I I think one very important step that's fairly easy to implement in all teams is the peer review.
Peer review.
So
Okay.
After you have created your code and you have cleaned it up, you have to hand it over to one of your teammates, and they have to really thoroughly check your code, whether they understand it, whether they think it's beautiful. And I think apart from pair programming, which probably would even be better, this is the one thing that's required to be implemented, required to ensure that whatever an individual developer creates is brought up to the level where it's owned by the entire team and it's no longer associated with the original author. It's everybody's code.
Okay. One last question that just kind of came to my head, and I'm just wondering, so, there are things that people can do, and I'm just wondering, is there something inherent in some languages? So I don't know, Java versus Python versus C#. I don't know. Is there something more, something that's more integral in the software language itself that also that helps it along from a beauty perspective?
There is the danger of using syntax that can be considered very elegant or at least very compact, but which may be very cryptic. There are examples in almost every language. I think Perl is probably the best example of a language that's extremely cryptic almost by nature. There are languages that, because of their strongly typeness, have a lot of expressiveness that you will not necessarily find in languages that are not as strongly typed. On the whole, I'm not sure whether languages inherently lend themselves. Well, there are some languages like Python where you need to use a certain indentation of your code, and that helps readability. Absolutely. Then, of course, all modern IDEs have plenty of options to do code formatting for you and add all the indentation you like in order to make the code readable to humans. So that used to be maybe a difference between languages, but it's less of a difference these days, or at least because of the IDEs, it is.
Okay. Well, Lucas, I think this is not only is it a beautiful subject, it's an important subject.
It is, it really is.
It is, and we encourage all the viewers out there to check it out. All the best.